Marcus Thornton III had never heard the word no in his 22 years of life. Standing in the gleaming marble lobby of his father's defense contracting empire, he watched a slight woman in faded cargo pants and a worn jacket walk past the security desk. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried herself with an odd stillness that Marcus mistook for timidity. When she accidentally brushed against his designer suit, he sneered. "Watch where you're going," he snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe try a gym sometime. You look like you'd blow over in a strong wind." The woman paused, her gray eyes meeting his for just a moment. She didn't respond, didn't react. She simply walked toward the elevators, and somehow that silence made Marcus angrier. "That's right, run along," he called after her. Weak people always do. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. What Marcus didn't know was that the woman, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, had just returned from a classified briefing with his father. What he couldn't see beneath her loose jacket were scars from 3 combat deployments and muscles honed by 15 years of the most brutal training the military could offer. At 7:30 a.m. the next morning, Marcus arrived at his father's private training facility for what was supposed to be an easy publicity stunt. His father, desperate to toughen up his spoiled son, had arranged for Marcus to spend 1 week training with some military consultants before Marcus took an executive position in the company. Marcus figured it would be like his expensive personal trainers. People paid to tell him he was doing great. He walked into the compound expecting soldiers in dress uniforms ready to salute him. Instead, he found 20 hardened Navy SEALs in full combat gear, and standing at the front of them was the woman from the lobby. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying across the field with unexpected authority, "we have a special guest this week. Marcus Thornton will be joining us for basic conditioning." One of the SEALs, a massive man with a grizzled beard, chuckled. "Ma'am, you sure about this? Kid looks like he'd cry if he broke a nail." Sarah's expression didn't change. "He'll keep up or he'll quit. Either way, he'll learn something." The first exercise was a simple 5-mile run in full gear. Marcus lasted half a mile before collapsing, gasping, his expensive running shoes covered in mud. Sarah appeared beside him, not even breathing hard. "On your feet," she said quietly. "I can't," Marcus wheezed. "I'm not built for this." For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, but something deeper. Disappointment, maybe. "You told me I looked weak yesterday," she said. "I've been shot twice, survived a helicopter crash in hostile territory, and carried a 200-pound man 8 miles through enemy fire to save his life. But you're right, Marcus. I'm the weak one here." She turned to leave, and something in Marcus broke. Maybe it was shame, or maybe it was the first real challenge he'd ever faced, but he forced himself to his feet. "Wait," he called. "I'll finish." The days that followed were the hardest of Marcus's life. At 4:15 a.m., he was doing push-ups in the rain. At 11:30 p.m., he was running obstacle courses in the dark. Sarah never yelled, never mocked, but she never let up either. The SEALs, initially dismissive, began to nod at him when he showed up each morning. On the 4th day, during a combat strategy session, Marcus finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. "How does someone like you end up training SEALs?" "I thought—" He trailed off, embarrassed. Sarah smiled slightly. "You thought what? That women can't fight? That small people can't be strong?" She pulled up her jacket sleeve, revealing a tattoo of crossed tridents. "I was the first woman to complete the Naval Special Warfare Training course. I've trained over 300 SEALs in close quarters combat and tactical survival. Your father hired me because when his teams face the impossible, they call me." On the final day, at 6:45 p.m., Marcus stood before the obstacle course one last time. His body was covered in bruises. His hands were blistered and bleeding, but something had changed in his eyes. "Whatever time I get," he told Sarah, "thank you for not giving up on me." She nodded. "I never give up on anyone who's willing to try." That's the real strength, Marcus. Not how much you can lift or how fast you can run. It's showing up when everything hurts and trying anyway. Marcus ran that course faster than he'd ever run anything in his life. He didn't beat any of the SEALs' times, but when he crossed the finish line, they were all there saluting him. Not because of his father's money or his last name, but because he'd earned it. 6 months later, Marcus walked back into his father's company. But instead of taking the executive office, he enlisted in the military, requesting assignment to the basic training program Sarah had designed. The billionaire's son had finally learned what real strength looked like, and it had been standing in front of him all along, wearing a worn jacket and carrying the weight of heroes on her shoulders.